Alright guys, welcome back to another video with Work Life and Balance. I want to share with you a story of how Gymshark, when it was valued at over £1 billion, made a massive mistake that almost cost them their entire business, their entire community. But they did manage to obviously save themselves. But I want to show you this, how it applies to you, your business, your niche. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of gurus, business mentors online shout about niche, what that actually means. I'm going to explain all of that to you today. But first of all, if you're running an online service business, this is going to be incredibly important that you do manage to understand your target audience, your niche a little bit better, and we can actually give you a resource to help with that for free. So first of all, the lesson of Gymshark. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. If you're familiar with the fitness industry at all, you probably know the origin story of Ben Francis and Gymshark. Okay, so I just want to give you a backstory for those that don't know. In 2012, they initially started Gymshark. It was around his probably 7th or 10th business at the time that he tried. I think he'd done a lot of drop shipping, a lot of emails, a lot of like website stuff around that sort of thing. I'm not 100% sure with that. I've met Ben Francis as well in the early days, around 2016. So that was nice able to have a chat with him in person, and crazy to think he's now a billionaire and done what he's done. But really nice guy. But to go back to the original story, in 2013 is when he then pivoted away from supplements and dropshipping supplements to focusing specifically on gym wear and apparel. And he was very, very clear with who he was serving at the very early stages. He penetrated the market with the fitness expeditions because he was speaking to the silent majority. You hear that phrase a lot, but it was the silent majority. Those young men and old men that were inspired by these massive bodybuilders. Obviously, you think of the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, but coming up to the late 2000s, you got the Jay Cutlers winning the Olympias, the Ronnie Colemans, the Phil Heaths. They were massive monsters of guys, right? And it was not really what the guys wanted to achieve. So it wasn't what the large silent majority wanted to achieve. But the supplement industries and the supplement businesses, they used these guys as poster boys, and they only actually made clothing or merchandise that suited those huge, massive physiques. They didn't cater for the large silent majority that supported their companies. So even though they were buying from them in terms of the supplements they were using, it wasn't really the end physique they actually all achieved. The majority of people just ended up, looking like a natural bodybuilder, a lot more size than an athlete, than a sports athlete. But they weren't these massive professional bodybuilders. So Ben saw that early on, and he saw it for himself. He had more muscle. He was a young guy coming up. He wanted to look good in the gym. You couldn't go for like the traditional sports activewear of Nike and Adidas, because they were the clothing that was, too tight really in certain areas, and it didn't really suit the physique. It didn't show off his physique. You probably had to get like, an XL, 2XL that would then be too baggy on the arms and stuff like that. And it didn't have the look that you easily get from so many brands that have copycatted Gymshark today. So he served that audience straight away. He was a first mover. To the past videos we've done on, total addressable market, these were growing and booming markets that we had no idea the scale it was going to grow to. It was the early days of social media, it was the early days of fitness influencers, and it was the early days of the fitness industry exploding as well. So 3 industries that were catapulting Gymshark into the stratosphere of where he managed to take it. But what he was 100% clear on was the problem he solved, who he served, who his customer base was, and the community. Whether he knew it or not, he was creating a massive community, and he saw that through the expos. I used to go to the Body Power Expo in Birmingham. Every year, the queues for Gymshark got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I remember the last year they were there, I think they paid £100,000 just for this stall, because the size of the square footage they took, because they knew the demand was going to be there, and they took over the event to the point where they then no longer needed to rely on joining the fitness expeditions, and they just created their own worldwide events where they would put on an event, and it would just be the Gymshark event now, and that's what's happening worldwide around the world in the capital cities. So crazy to think what he's done. But the lesson here is that he served a clear target audience and niche, right? And I'm going to bring this back now so it makes sense as to what you need to do. They also made a huge mistake, because I think a lot of the times in business, right, when you do really well, when things go really well, sometimes you don't know what is making that thing do well. And I think for Gymshark, even with the the massive growth of the company being valued over £1 billion, they were almost too ambitious. Ben Francis, the slogan itself, be a visionary. He's a visionary. He's had so much success. Why wouldn't you believe, when you've already achieved the impossible, that you can't go on and continue to achieve the impossible? He had everything going for him, but he moved a little bit too soon. I'm not saying he won't ever get there, but what he did, right, in 2020, so they were valued over £1 billion. His next mission and movement for the company was to no longer be just the gym brand. They pivoted elsewhere, so they were no longer just guys. They were Gymshark Women, which was exploding, perhaps even bigger, I'm not sure, than the revenue they get from the male side of things. But they owned the gym market, absolutely dominated it. The community events, the fitness events, every single fitness influencer wanted to be sponsored by Gymshark. That was like the pinnacle of like what a fitness influencer wants to achieve with their life, which is crazy. I think that's moving now as well into they want their own brand and they realize the value in themselves, because fitness influencers were severely undervalued back in the day. But what happened was he wanted to be the next Nike. He wanted to compete with Nike. He wanted to take over basically the activewear space, the sportswear space. He wanted Gymshark to be up there with the likes of Nike, Adidas, Reebok, like those big names, right? And what happened was, as he moved then and went broader with his niche, I suppose, that's when he lost out. So he not only did he fail to compete with Nike at this stage, but he also then lost the connection with his foundation, which was gym. It was gym-goers, which is difficult. And what happens then with online, with the ways there's so many other copycat brands looking to take that space immediately as soon as Gymshark lets that connection go. You had other gyms like other gymwear brands like Vanquish. You had the Young LA coming into it. They were sweeping up straight away where Gymshark was missing and leaving behind through Gymshark's fault. It was their fault, right? Fast forward to 2024, so it's 2025 today. So a year ago, they realized their mistake. They'd lost that connection with their core community foundation that made Gymshark who it was. And they decided, right, we need to double down on reigniting that connection with our past customers, with who we are, and what we want to do, and we want to dominate and own this space because that's who they are. They're Gymshark at the end of the day, is in the name. So they released a new campaign, We Do Gym. That's the reason behind why they did this. If you didn't know, this is the reason why. They re-established that connection. They went bigger and harder on the community events. They took it to a whole new level with what they had going on in these events in places like New York, in London. They dominated. They opened up flagship stores. We Do Gym was everywhere, plastered everywhere. Why? It wasn't shouting out sale. It wasn't shouting out a new line. It was a campaign, We Do Gym, to make sure that they knew we are here to serve you that is not looked after properly by the other brands out there, and we are the best in the gym space, in the gymwear space. So that's what it was all about. That was the reason why the campaign was so successful. It just recaptured what they'd already lost and let go of, and it obviously doubled down and scaled much further as well. So the lesson from Gymshark there is, if you're in the online space, if you run any online business where you attract clients from online and you get your leads from online, you need to niche down further than you think. The lesson with Gymshark, even if you're valued at over £1 billion, which I'd be very surprised if there's a billionaire watching this video right now. If you are, maybe you've got some other options out there. But the lesson with that is, if you're not valued at over that size, even Gymshark, which they were, by them going too broad, they failed. You need to stay close to your connection and be extremely niche down when you're serving the online market. Why? And a lesson from my own past. So if you didn't know, I've got two separate businesses in the past which has been successful. We've got the gym business, which is a physical location in our local city, Swansea, in Wales in the UK. It's a gym. So we rely on, it's basically controlled by our radius. Anything outside of a 10-mile radius, we know they're not going to be a consistent paying monthly member. They might do it for a few months, but it won't last long. We know that from the data. So we're restricted by our location and the amount of population we've got living within that location. Whereas the online market is completely different. You have potentially got access to 5 billion social media users, half of which, over 50%, speak English. So 2.5 billion potential customers. If you are not extremely specific, someone else will be, and you or the end customer will relate a lot more to the person that speaks directly to their problems, whether it's a business you're serving or whether it's a consumer you're serving. If it's an individual person, you need to speak to every single problem. And I'm not going to go into it on this video. I'm just explaining to you how important it actually is, and so that you realize it from my own mistakes, because I thought the same rules applied with online to local business. And I got hurt by it, because we'd had success initially with the online coaching business. We scaled to over 250 plus active clients online, scaled a team, sales team, everything like that. What happened was, I applied the same principles again from success, didn't realize what actually made it successful, to the gym business. Went extremely niche. Again, we called it power building hardcore gym. Now, all this did was it shut the door, basically, to anyone that wasn't extremely hardcore, which is what going niche is all about. But I didn't have the reach that I did with online, because I was limited by location. So within 2 years, I quickly pivoted to rebranding the gym, PB Fitness Gym, marketing campaigns to prove that we are inclusive of other people, which is what we were about at the time. I just, from my past, I knew that being niche worked, but I didn't know it only worked when you've got enough of a total addressable market. So we quickly changed that so that we won. We basically boosted our memberships very quickly by another 200. Women were training there a lot more frequently because they were not scared of walking through the door. They didn't think it was just a meathead's gym anymore. So that was the lesson I learned the hard way in my own life. So I want you to take that lesson and apply it to your own business. To really simplify it, I'm just going to write it down here so that you totally understand. If you have got a local business, right? So you're basically limited by location, yeah? Then you need to be broad with who you serve. If you are truly limited by location, if you're in a big city, you've still got a big reach, it's okay to be niche. But if you are online, so if you do online coaching, consultants, a service business, anything like that, then you need to be more niche than you can possibly imagine. And when I say more niche than you can possibly imagine, we've created a target audience identifier to help you truly identify your dream client. And then every piece of content you make, every single ad you make, whatever you make, you are just imagining that person, that dream client, is always on the other side of who's watching your content. Don't swipe up on your story views and have a look at who's actually watching. Forget about that. Just imagine every single post you make, every single piece of copywriting you do for your landing pages, your funnels, your VSL, whatever it is, you're thinking your dream client is on the other side of that. And that's the way you're going to attract those dream clients. And every time a dream client finds you, they will 100% want to work with you. So that's the take-home lesson there, is just be extremely niche, more niche than you can possibly imagine. Like I said, if you want to use the framework that we use to find out how to truly identify all the different problems on a much deeper level that your dream client is actually feeling, to be extremely niche, then that target audience identifier is going to help you. Be in the description below. So I hope this helps. This channel, Work Life Unbalanced, is exactly what it says on the tin, is to relate to people like you that work life is unbalanced in the short term so that we can live a good life in the long run. And obviously, hopefully enjoy the journey along the way. But it's about basically scaling, running a service business, and we can hopefully grow together. I'm documenting my journey as well. So yeah, let me know if you've got any questions, comment below if you want to see anything specific. And thank you very much, and I will speak to you soon.